Okay, welcome back. In this segment, we're going to talk about EPA's recommendations for what to do if you've got asbestos. They have a multi-tiered approach for how to deal with asbestos. And their number one recommendation for a homeowner is that if you have asbestos, your best option is to leave it alone. Now, that can mean a number of things. So for example, let's say you've got maybe asbestos in your walls, maybe it's behind a couple of coats of paint. That's protected. Chances of that asbestos being disturbed and fibers being sent into the air, pretty thin. Similarly, if you've got asbestos duct wrap, for example, if that's behind sheetrock, or if it's 8 feet tall and it's not in an area where kids are going to be disturbing that, that is probably not going to be a problem. One of the things you can do, and we're going to talk about this shortly, is you can actually seal that. Now, by contrast, let's say that you have the popcorn ceiling texture. Let's say it's in the living room, let's say it's in the kitchen, and maybe all of the kids' bedrooms. If you have a popcorn ceiling texture, it is going to be disturbed. You're going to have kids jumping and touching it. They're going to be bouncing basketballs against it. They're going to be sweeping it perhaps. Who knows what kids do. But the attempt at trying to protect, maybe you can actually have a home where there are no kids. Maybe you've just got two 70-year-old people who never have grandkids come over, or maybe the grandkids are 2 feet tall. If that's the set of conditions, then you have a real good probability of not having asbestos fibers get into the air, and you can leave that popcorn ceiling texture alone as is. By contrast, if you've got a family with 12 kids and every one of them is a teenager, then we need to take some steps to protect that asbestos or to remove it. So plan A, according to EPA, is to do absolutely nothing at all. Leave it alone, let it stay there. As long as it's not disturbed, it's not going to be releasing asbestos fibers into the breathing air. Option 2 would be to protect it. And the best example of that is maybe you have that asbestos on the ducts. If that happens, one of your options is to go to a place like Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever and get what's called foil tape. It looks like aluminum foil, and you can actually tape over the asbestos and protect it so that it's not seen, it's not touched, and it's not going to be disturbed and release fibers into the air. A similar example of protecting would be to spray paint on the underside of the popcorn ceiling texture. Now, EPA talks favorably about this option. I have some heartburn with it because it's still going to look 1970, and next time somebody goes to buy this house, it's going to look like popcorn ceiling that's been painted over. Somebody's going to want to remove that, and the problem with paint on over a popcorn ceiling texture is in order to get it down safely, you got to get it wet, and if there's paint there, you can't get it wet. So you pretty much have to wait for, where you can have Scotty in a starship target your home for the asbestos and beam that asbestos out into space somewhere. And that's not going to happen anytime soon. So once you've painted that stuff, it's going to be there for an indefinite amount of time. A similar option would be to actually put a new layer of sheetrock on the underside of the asbestos. That way it encapsulates that stuff forever, and it's not going to be a problem until it's time to bulldoze the house. At that point, then there's a problem. You really can't get that stuff down safely. But, depending on the age of the home, that may be 50 or 100 years from now, who knows. That's what encapsulating means. So you can go with foil tape, you can go with paint. Now, I had mentioned that sometimes you'll have this sheet of asbestos that is there because it's a fire protection, maybe between a wood frame wall and a hot fireplace flue. If that's there, you don't necessarily want to remove it because as you're removing, you're releasing fibers into the air. And as long as that thing stays there where it is, we're not releasing fibers into the air. So one of your options is actually to encapsulate that asbestos sheet. You can do that by placing maybe a piece of sheet metal, not something that's combustible, not something that's going to burn, but sheet metal over that asbestos to protect the asbestos from being disturbed. Then your last option, according to EPA, option number 3, the one that you do only if options 1 and 2 don't work, would be to have that stuff professionally removed. You can, if you talk to the state or to EPA, your choices are only 2 things. One is to remove it yourself, all by yourself as the homeowner, which you probably won't do it right, and then you'll have asbestos fibers in your house for the rest of your life and in your lungs for the rest of your life. Or to have it professionally removed. That is not cheap.